Welcome, everybody, to Mud Flood with Armageddon. That's right, the Mud Flood. You've heard about it. The Mud Flood was Armageddon. Now, if you hadn't heard about that, you probably hadn't heard that. I think the rocks are body parts of the Titans reserved in judgment. But no, no. If you haven't heard that, don't let them tell you anything else unless they're willing to debate you in a fair and honest way. RJ will be joining me tomorrow and hopefully even possibly later tonight. You know what? He was talking about this today, and we were wondering where President Biden was 3 days ago. He was in Mexico meeting with Ken Salazar and the new Jewish president who Ken Salazar has high hopes for. Hola, Victoria. We're we're in. I'm the artist known as Salt Paco, at least to Ken Salazar, who I talked to twice today, and to his brother, who in conspiracy world, those guys, they would say he's Ken's handler. Leroy Salazar does not get his picture taken. So he wouldn't pose with me. I got plenty of pictures and fresh video of his current position. And yes, I was talking at the president of the university's house. And I'm going to run for president of the student body of the university. Everything is the prayers being answered. And we're going to explain, what is this thing I'm talking about? Who, in case you didn't know, is the ambassador to Mexico, former senator from Colorado with Ben Whitehorse Nelson, those guys back when it was all this was a Republican state, and he's not he's a Democrat. When he was elected with Barack Obama. They're pals. He said he ate dinner with Bill Clinton 10 days ago. Good Lord. He talks about when he met Cheney and stuff, and it's like, ugh, wow. It's crazy, right? So anyway, RJ's not popping in. We're going to so you can go to this website at Adams University, the Rio Grande Natural Area Celebration, the San Luis Valley. I've told you all about it. They founded this in 2015. There he is. They founded it in 2015 in honor of their parents, the Salazar Rio Grande Norte Del Norte at Adams State University engages in conservation and preservation efforts along with enhancing economic development, career opportunities for students through outreach, education, and programs. And if you want to study the water, they are having the Water Education Initiative, which I think, we know there's only 22 years left, and, they're not really expressing a lot of interest in my cult, but Jesus cult, but they are interested in my art and the fact that, oh my goodness, I'm doing really good in school. But here's the thing: you could get a minor in water study. How appealing should that be to people? From what they say, you study water and you're hooked on studying water for the rest of your life because we are water. And I think, I'm going to take this class and I'm going to tell them what I believe about water and how it has a memory and that it is the memory of which we will all be judged one day. So they're from this. His family, the Salazar family, and good, I am sharing, are the original people when the whole Spain took over the Mayans and everything, and then they gave out land grants. They can supposedly trace their family back. Am I hearing that the baby has been born, Sergio? We interrupt this program to bring you something that is worth breaking into a program for. Yay! How about that? Now, I thought, now, that's a little early, right? That's 4 or 5 days early. So it is. Yay. Hallelujah. That's what they used to call Dutch evangelism when two Christians have a baby. Is how do you get new Christians? Well, there's one. Hallelujah. Oh man. Oh man. Yay. Ken Salazar is like, whatever. Whatever, man. Water has a memory. We'll pick it up from there. Water has a memory. Okay. Here's Ken when he was in 2009, he was the Secretary of the Interior. He's not a senator anymore. Secretary of the Interior. He he likes these bolo ties. That's for sure. You should see the one that him and Leroy had like on matching once today. Leroy, you might as well. He's his older brother, but honestly, they look alike a lot. A lot. So here's the guy, the gang of 14 moderates. I honestly, after talking to his family and seeing, you know, what I think he honestly is trying to do and how much it does seem that they care about the water. And that's one of the things that of why I chose, hey, the camp of the saints we can make it here. We can make it here. Other people have made it here, surrounded by these sacred mountains in this valley that has a seemingly inexhaustible supply of water underneath it, if you even need it from all the water and the snow in the mountains, if we can keep it from being poisoned by the glyphosate and the other poisons that, the world tells us, well, how can we feed our armies if we don't mass produce food and we need glyphosate for that? Well, I think what we need to learn is I've had and expressed my concerns about redacted with you know Natalie and Clayton just joining a fresh stream of repentant Democrats who all of a sudden, like, they like Trump, they like, they don't like this, that. You never hear them speak out about abortion. I'm suspicious of it all, but in the meantime, we kind of have to drop the I hate Republicans, I hate Democrats, so I hate their platform, and that nothing that they argue for makes sense. They still want fresh water. I really believe that Ken Salazar, he knows how bad Dick Cheney is. I don't know what he knows. I do know that on the second question, when he was being, on this exclusive news video today of his being interviewed, a man asked him, he said, why should we trust a Jewish governor or president of Mexico, to reform there when our reforms are completely corrupt and, beyond fixing? And he dodges that question like the pro he is at dodging questions. You gotta be. First off, I want to remind you, Vic, no, do you remember this? You sent me this. I had this up for today too. It's 1711. She sent me this at 1712, and she's saying, other people are finding out nothing is real after 1712. It's all some sort of a rewrite with the AI decoding everything. What? Oh my goodness. Am I going the wrong way? Yep, I was. So it goes right here, since 1712, they wanted to create a fake narrative of events and names, publish it in millions of fake history books, which the New World Order education system is using to teach the masses. How about that? Fake, fake, fake. And Heelberg, Flamenco, all these. It's not one or two. It's anybody that studies it can go like, wow, they easily messed with this. Got us a fake calendars, Gregorian, Julian, like the salad, Chinese, Hebrew, Islamic, Tibetan. I am going the wrong way. Where's my new pictures? Okay, so here we go. So here's a picture that I probably pressed off while I was waiting to talk to the ambassador. There, I finally got my picture. So happy. There he is. And what I like, at the after party, at the reception, at the president's mansion, which was designed by the architect that did the Weld County Courthouse that has 22 different symbols that go back to Greece. Greek architecture everywhere, like our school, like everything he supposedly did. Oh, so many things. He's grabbed a beer, local beer, and there's that bolo tie with the turquoise. I might make him one like that to try to make him like me more because I could knock that out in probably 3 days and make it look really cool. But I've never braided leather. I'm only going to do the brooch part. So this is the president of the university, and as you can see, he's putting up with me. Yes, he's getting the whole. He's not ready to join the Jesus cult, but he will listen.
Afghanistan in my time as a senator. Those countries never functioned then, may not function yet, in large part because they don't have a judicial system that works. You have the bad guys coming in one side and one.
And I think this is the question where he dodges it artfully. Not good quality because I was just using my phone microphone. He's not going to answer how come they're going to expect to fix Mexico when the United States is broken.
This is part of it. So having certainty in a branch of government that is impartial, that is fair, that is devoid of politics, just expertise, doing what's right, doing what's just, all the law. That's what we got to aim for here in the U.S. And that's what
Look at how skeptical the I didn't know these pictures were being taken. Well, I'm going to say he didn't endorse me, but he did listen to me. So anyway, he's avoiding this question.
Those countries.
What is with this thing of how come sometimes it shows it?
That's changed over time. What had it not been for my older brother Jan, and
that's how you say nothing. This is actually better.
So this one particular incident, December 9th, 2021, there's a tractor trailer, or three of them, the one tractor trailer carrying over 170 migrants, mostly from Panama. Goes around a curve by a river in Tuxtla Gutierrez. The driver loses control. Trailer goes, tips on its side, crashes. 53 people die. So I get a call from the foreign minister of Guatemala. And they call from the foreign minister of Mexico. He says, Ken, we gotta stop this. It's the cartels, the transnational criminal organizations that are doing this. Because they make more money from trafficking migrants, frankly, now than they do from other things that they do.
They are trafficking people because they make more money than drugs.
And we are making some progress on that particular case. I can tell you lots of these stories, but let me share this one with you because it tells you the moral imperative of what we have to do, why we have to succeed. So you're the governor of the state of Chiapas and representatives from the Guatemalan legislature that have come down because a lot of their people have died. Well, they let me in with the governor into the ICU unit, this hospital there.
So what I'm thinking here, people, is it's entirely possible this is all one contrived thing. No, only I could do this here. How is this working here?
So this one particular incident, December 9th.
So I had to get out of that one for a second there anyway. Let's see what we got here. Here's where it's happening. This is the pipe organ they put in. This was built in 1920, one of the structures designed by that guy. Just give me a second to figure out what happened there. So he's talking about Guatemala. And he does also emphasize the fact that, you know, the Mexico we think of is not the Mexico there is. They have an economy. They have their Elon Musks. They have some of the richest people in the world that live there. They have access to oil, a progressive woman president. And yet he gives, I think he gives a quote in here that there's 14,000 from, you know, Latinos coming over the border and 300,000 people from Asia legally working here with green cards and everything else that are just welcomed in. And the 14,000 are being cartelled. So I just wanted to let's go back to that now. I had forgot that point when somehow that frame froze up on me. We were at 213.
In the bed. There's a little boy, Damian. The woman looks up at me and I said, Soy el embajador Salazar. Vengo nomás.
I know you don't know hablar español. He'll speak English in a minute.
El sufrimiento que tiene. How much I heard for your suffering. She smiled and she said, thank you for coming. And she says, that morning, my little boy, Damian and I got on a trailer in Guatemala on the other side of the border to Cuba. And we were very happy. We were very happy. My little boy, Damian, was smiling, she says, because it's December 9th. We're on our way to the United States, to Wisconsin, because that's where my husband is. My little boy had not seen his father for 2 years. I had not seen my husband for 2 years. So she says, I got on the trailer that morning, and we were happy. And now we're here. But she's smiling, and she looks at Damian and she says, and he's smiling too. We have faith it's going to get better. I often think about that story because it happens not once, not 100, not 1,000, but lots and lots of times. So if there's a moral, humanitarian imperative for us to deal with this issue, that the devil, my good friend George W. Bush, John McCain, in those days, even Lindsey Graham, changed. But we gotta do something. So what are we doing? And where are we now? It's not all that complicated. There's 3 things we gotta do. We have to address the root causes. Why are people leaving where they are leaving? It was often say people ought to have the right to remain. They're forced into these migration trails for a lot of circumstances. And so that's projects that we're developing now jointly with Mexico and other countries on trying to help development in Guatemala and other places. So one is root causes. Two is legal pathways. Legal pathways. You know, people, if you give them a legal pathway, it's different from the pathway of controlled by the transnational criminal organizations, the cartels, more than likely going to take legal pathways. We here in this valley know something about some of those pathways. I remember
And right now,
visiting
my
potato sellers in.
my concern is this valley, because I think that most in the city here, pretty soon you're going to be on your own, or anything near to a city, probably within 3 years. And that seems like a long time to you, and I know it's hard to go paycheck to paycheck. You need to find a place to where you can kind of feel like I do, because I know you're unsettled. And I do believe that, when he talks about how much he admired, Lindsey Graham and John McCain, who he called his mentor back in the day when they were the gang of 12 trying to, like, hey, let's just think of, our own resources and our own country first, and it does seem like, doggone, the Republicans on that crew were not that good either, man. I'm not saying, I'm not going to vote. I'm not going to vote in this election. And if you do vote, like RJ's voting for like some party called Constitution Party, whatever.
Center Colorado, other places where the H-2A programs work. And we have issued out of my authority in the embassy 360,000 plus H-2As for agricultural workers all over the country. That's a legal pathway.
That's even more than I said. 360 Asian workers, just here, come on in.
They come here, they work, they do a great job, go back to their families. So
They're probably doing a great job, just like you said.
You gotta have enforcement of the borders for a lot of reasons, but especially for security. You need to know who's coming in and out. And I get to see the numbers and the realities. Some people think it's just Mexicans and Guatemalans. Fact is, the number of migrants coming across into Mexico are from Asia.
Wow. I told you we're breaking news. This is only 3-4 hours old.
That said,
this is the ambassador from Mexico laying it down this afternoon. It's a mess.
And then we have to have consequences for people who do violate the law. And some of that we instituted the numbers, you can look at them. We are at the lowest number of migrant arrivals at our border than we have been in 5 years.
And who knows? Are we really going to go, well, that can't be possible because that means that, Trump isn't, the man, or it wasn't better under Trump. I did that again, but now I know how to do it. So did I show the one fair use thing? Those are my videos, but I don't make people, they can use it without having to show the fair use disclaimer. I wasn't sharing the screen for how long? The whole time through that speech? Great. All I did was. So we all know what we're talking about, of what I claim, like people don't like saying, I'm a prophet. I like to be an historian like Tacitus. Tacitus wrote a history. And then later they say somebody, using that infrared or something, whatever, they found out there was a text that had been written over, and they read it, and it gave the one of the only histories, that, because they found another one like it that, talked about how Nero treated the Christians in the fire, and it talks about, it is the Christians named for Christus, and it talked, of course they talked about how, they had, they thought they had abominations because they really believed they were drinking blood and eating things, the bodies. And so, but it's a good proof. And when people finally read a history, like I did, because we're dealing with this. The first to speak in court sounds right until cross examination begins. And in 2013, 14, I started to doubt all of our history and believe the Bible because I was hearing that flat earth stuff and how true the Bible was. And I've lived my whole life trying to believe the Bible is all true. And so I started reading it harder and realized that, well, they spoke first when they put the globe in the classroom and they started telling us what to believe about what's monotheism and what is polytheism and what is God. And, we started it ended up basically this simple of going through it, reading it for the 100th time, reading it online, listening to it, then realizing that, wow, in Revelation 19, why would they lie and say that the new mystery is that there's three gods instead of one? Instead of the mystery is that the Gentiles are equal with the Jews in the eyes of God. And the other mystery is that not one word of this book was written to you. Every word of it was written to a people alive then who were waiting for Jesus Christ's return because he promised it. He swore to it. He told his mom and his friend, some of you standing here. And then it happened. It clicks. It goes, wow. He wins, because he's, well, I mean, he's the King of Kings. He's the Lord of Lords. There's other kings. There's other lords. There's one, Elyon, God Most High. You read it and you go like, wait, the beast and the false prophet are captured. And the false prophet was the same one who had done the signs by which he deceived those who had received the mark of the beast and those who worshiped its image. That's who they were talking to. I hope I'm sharing because it's good to see and read along. And so the rest of the people get, it's like Armageddon, man. If you're not in the mountains saying, fall on me, well, you should have been. But Satan gets put into the bottomless pit for 1,000 years, and you go, oh, wait. That doesn't fit any other theology except what at the time I called Diaria Patria, Golden Age Past. And the Patria, past part of it, is infused with the word, like the Praetorian Guard ruled with a rod of iron. Because he's bound for that 1,000 years, it's sealed over him. But then you keep reading about, okay, well, there's those souls that got beheaded for the testimony of Jesus. That's the blessed first resurrection. Now there's a second death. It has no power over them. When the 1,000 years are over, Satan is going to be released. Nobody has told the world that until the Lord showed that to him in the story, and who said, wow, I'm glad my sister has got all these degrees in grammar and I have 17 credits, but refused their stupid degree. Still know how to read and write, can read plain language, and said, we're not reading this book right. And the world has changed, yet few want to stay on the narrow road and believe what the Bible says. But there's no doubt that Satan, this is the only part. And it was still written to them. It's not we found the book. We can have faith to believe that because, you know, the time of, what you have now is more of a historian who can accurately read the Bible and has had a couple of visions and, amazing things like that. But mostly it's simply been, none of that has been the proof I've offered. You have to believe I've had a vision. No, it's always like, here's the Bible says this. And it's the first theology that isn't a Jesuit theology. So I'm thrilled with it. I know the Lord has showed that it's going to work. And by spending 2.5 hours with the Salazar family and discovering that, oh my goodness, there are so many Salazars in this valley, and it's hard to explain. And I'll go over how special this valley is tomorrow during church. Uh, Welcome off grid, John. That is exciting, isn't it? We're waiting. Gonna be good. Everybody's healthy. So Armageddon's over. And with Armageddon over, that means that there was that reaping. And we showed that earlier in 1711. The people, if you have any questions, you can ask the people in the chat why that's so important. I just want to emphasize that nothing about this requires them to believe what we do about the Bible. As long as they believe in the water and the purity and try it, because this valley is going to be full of people like you. The Amish and the Mennonite are already moving here. And so lots of opportunity to witness. And we're right. And we love them. Even if they're our enemy, we're to love them. So that's weird, right? Anyway, I mean, we all know this, right? Except other people don't want it to be about the Bible.
Shut your mouth. There was no wind that day, of course. The people will love this story for years to come. The Cardboard Palace. Amazing. This is a mess. Construction did not begin until 1915. And literally, right next to that, construction started March 31st, 1913. Unbelievable. The Cardboard Palace. Can you believe it? What were we doing believing this nonsense for so many years? Who's the architect? Here, George Whittet. This is how we unlock so many old.
He is funny. He talks about their names and stuff. And then it's like their names are all made up by a computer.
Palace and Towers Hotel. What an incredible city. With an aerial shot here of both of these structures. On November 29th,
Oh, it's on
2008,
fire.
the Taj Hotel suffered devastating damage during the attacks, where a lot of the building.
See, this stuff is everywhere.
Statues of the past. Now, do you think anything is off? Or are you still believing the mainstream story? Do you think that it's odd that all the statues that resembled the individuals on the wall were all removed and destroyed? Let me know in the comments below. The ones on the wall couldn't just be removed. They are on the wall. So they were forced to make up a story about those. But we all know that these individuals depict the.
That's like looking in the mirror. Well, 30, 40 years ago, back, when RJ was still in single digits.
Past, the previous civilization.
Double digits.
They were not from our timeline, in my opinion. And this is what they're hiding in the 1950s. Our true history.
Wow.
Our true past. It's incredible. Destroying all of the old world's work, their statues, leaving some.
And that doggone concrete that they lost. Man, I don't know about that. So there's that here. This is another historian that found books and, but he rewrote the history from the Roman Catholic point of view. And I'm just saying, I don't want to revive the Ku Klux Klan, but I'm just saying, I don't think they're on the narrow road. That's all. I mean, who wants to say they're on the narrow road? I don't. So anyway, my artistic career didn't start with this book, but you know, I did write a book that if you read it, you'll find out it talked about a people who have no past. All they know is that possibly a virus killed over 99.7% of the people alive at the end of the 21st century. Wow. And so, they're releasing information, ray guns, world takeovers, and we still have conspiracy RS. It's all right there. It's all right there for years. People, look at this thing. Did you see that? It just went up 100 views. 3 hours old because everybody knows
Wanted to
something's
mention
up.
that they found another ancient cannon found in Aliabad in India. The cannon was
In a
found next to a
canyon?
discarded car with garbage strewn around it near a fortified wall built by past rulers. A lot of discoveries of cannons in India as well. But moving back to North America, I want to talk about Halifax in Nova Scotia, Canada, East Coast of Canada. And I've briefly touched upon this site in an earlier video, but I want to go into a bit more depth. And there's this armory not too far away from the Star Fort, the Halifax Armory. And I think the construction date is late 1890s that were given anyway. The exterior design is based on a medieval
Got some other
castle,
stuff. So look at
which
those
is
towers
fairly common for a lot
closely.
of these armories, actually. They made an interesting
Not
find
that
along the
close.
side of this armory, and I'm going to touch upon that. Here's a hint, it involves cannons. This, you can
Cannons.
see there were some architectural drawings, and you can see with the grade, see this telltale mud flood sign where you have these windows that are disappearing,
All
basically.
right.
This is something.
Just a tease. So we'll remember 553, but you guys, you gotta look at this. This is unbelievable.
Talking about hide and seek with our history, and we're going to focus on these cannons typically associated with a lot of these star forts and even armories, so should be interesting.
Hold on to
Let's
your
get
hat
into
if
it
you
now.
haven't
The
seen
first
it.
site I want to touch on is Fort Zachary Taylor, and this is in Key West in Florida.
It's like a Southern cop right there. Now, Fort Zachary Taylor. That's a new one on me. I had not seen these pictures. Hold on to your hats. How long have they been hiding history?
What is of note and what I found interesting is that they found within the walls of this fort, they found these buried cannons. I think it was in the 1970s that they found this. These older cannons and ammunition were buried in the newly constructed outer walls. And these are just some images of these cannons.
The older cannons were buried inside the fort after the Civil War. In the early 1970s, Mr. Howard England has researched the location of these guns and was the one who discovered it. And what it said on that brief intro, the older cannon and ammunition were buried in the newly reconstructed outer walls. Think of it as giant rebar. They were trying to save the money and hide the cannon.
Walls, and these are just some images of these cannons, but apparently the cannons were buried inside the fort after the Civil War, and it was in the early 1970s that Mr. Howard England researched the location of these guns, and he was the one who discovered them. So disposing of some of our history inside the walls of the fort, and this is a recurring theme associated with a lot of these forts. Some more images here. And in addition to the cannons, they also found some other interesting.
This is something that he says he's going to have to research more, and I am going to have to research more. I already have a screenshot of it. Don't worry about that. Oh my goodness, this could clear up and produce 7,000 gallons from seawater into potable drinking water Further excavations revealed additional chambers filled with Civil War artifacts. In room 14, a rare 300-pound parrot rifle weighing 35,000 pounds. It was unearthed, along with Dr. Normandy's patent distillation plant. Distillation is the way, you know, I should have said that. A first of a kind apparatus capable of producing 7,000 gallons of fresh water from seawater yesterday, today, and tomorrow.
Artifacts. Further excavations revealed additional chambers filled with Civil War artifacts, including this seawater distillation plant, Dr. Normandy's patent distillation plant, first of a kind apparatus capable of producing 7,000 gallons of fresh water from seawater per day. And on
You guys know about the parrot rifle. The people that just watch his channel probably don't.
the right, this is just a 7,000 gallon tank, 8 feet high, 12 feet in diameter, just to give you an idea of how much saltwater conversion this was capable of producing. That's an interesting element to this and something I might have to look into a bit further, but just wanted to add that in here. And after the Civil War, at some point, this fort was transferred from the Army to the Navy, and then it was used as a lot of these structures that we're looking at. But there's a twist with this building because it does appear this is intentional. Getting to these images, the images were taken from a fold-out plan published in Canadian Architect and Builder, and they were drawn by the
I've been trying to tell people for a while, it's the ones that they jack up and the ones that show arches, you have to buy the kit complete. And you have to make it fit on the ground where it's going to be. If the elevation is one way, you just have to say, well, we have to dig down and make it flat, baby. It seems that it one doesn't mean like, oh, well, they built it that way. That doesn't explain the parts where there's 30 meters.
architect and you see the sides of this particular structure. I don't think the building was constructed like this. And I think that this architect, he maybe was assigned this building and just drawing what he sees. And even the architect can
Maybe.
tell there's windows that go below grade here. But when they were doing excavations on this particular site, they uncovered
talking
these
about real
4
places.
cannons. And I touched upon this in an earlier video. They tried to say these were part of the foundation, but they're actually sitting at the level of these windows. They're basically at the bottom of these windows, and we can tell that the foundation would be further down. So this was all done after this building was already in place. And I don't know if I touched on this in the previous video, but there's a transition point that happens here. And
Yeah, there's a transition point. Okay, what else after Armageddon? After the 1,000 years, 2 angels are told, put in your sickle and reap. One of them had specific orders and was told it's because it's time to squeeze out the grapes of wrath. That was at the end of the 1,000 years, the reaping, and it left just us fugitives, the motley crew, the last people who have a chance to be born again. It's the rest of the dead could also be read. The last of the people who are born in their sins, who at one time in their life hear a voice, Jesus, calling his sheep to a narrow road. And it starts when you're born again. And when you're born again, you don't even know it. It takes that time of sanctification and growth because he changed your heart. And sometimes it happens faster than in others, but usually it takes a while to realize I'm reading the Bible more. The things I used to hate, now I love. The things I used to love, I like me, I drink maybe a beer or two a year just to be like, I'm not against beer. I know that some people drink it more, but after a while, it's like, it's not worth the calories to me. Uh, so where's that going? We're all going to be different. We're all thrown broadcast seeds into different soil of which you didn't have a choice. And when you're born again, that's the analogy. Like with your mother, you don't remember. You only remember who you are now. And that's like when you're born again. Eventually you realize I am a child of God. And to know that what they did was they would, if they believed it in their heart, they would confess it with their mouth. They would say, Jesus Christ is Lord, out loud to somebody, if that's possible. And that's what this is all about. That's where this is going. There'll be people that have no reason to doubt the Bible for any reason. And we're going to be listening to someone very soon that he doubts the Bible in every way. And he thinks that what happened in Egypt was Jesus being mean, telling Moses to be mean to the Egyptians. And he gives every benefit of the doubt to the Egyptians, not one time mentioning, it's like, they're totally warned, man. They're the bad guys. What is he even thinking? But yet, that's what they think. Love. Our God is love. And it's hard to see that love. We have faith, but right now, in the middle of judgment, knowing right around the corner that it's like, oh wow, in some parts of the world they're already eating each other, and we're going broke. And it's like, oh gosh, people, what's really going on in North Carolina right now? Couple more seconds.
Intentional changing of the grade, which gives the mud flood appearance. So that is an interesting note. And if you look around Halifax, you will find other buried cannons used as bollards. And we're told that after the British besieged Louisbourg in 1758, they lined Barrington Street with, in this case, with a captured cannon. So we're told the British were responsible for modifying the grade in other parts of Halifax. So that just opens up a can of worms.
Who doesn't like the can of worms? So anyway, this doesn't look like what I'm going to show you, but this is in Elmhurst, Cook County, Illinois. My oldest daughter graduated from this university. And she was accepted to Marquette University. They have a speech audio pathology degree they offer for master's degree, and 25 people from around the country are allowed into it every year, 12 from Marquette and 13 at large. And my daughter was one of them. And this is such an interesting town that has this in a cemetery built in 1865. No big deal. Windmills of Rhode Island. Let's look at them. Maybe. Okay. All right. They're old. What? Wait a minute. Okay, this is not what we're looking at, is not this. I wonder why they're calling that a windmill. Here's some other windmills. What's this? Pre-Columbian era windmills? Oldest buildings. Okay. Dark Canyon Wilderness, much like what some people will be living in and comfortably in 10, 15 years. Oldest buildings. They're still there. A lot of them waiting for people to come and say, we're still here. You can live here. Is this in the United States? Mariana Islands. Okay. I guess they can. We got that along the way somehow. Puerto Rico. Look at that Starfort wall. Nice shot. Okay. That's old. It's just wood. I wonder if that was a historic windmill. Wow. Swedish cabin in Philadelphia, sometime after 1638. My goodness. Quite a hodgepodge of what we're supposed to believe, you know. There's an old house. There's an old windmill. I thought that one from Rhode Island would pop up within the next 3 or 4 for about the last 40. It's called the Newport Tower. Round stone tower located at Truro Park, Newport, Rhode Island, which remains, they say, of a windmill built around 1650. Take or give 1,000 years. Some people claim it's the Viking Tower. They've called it that. Anyway, have you ever heard of the Niagara Bay? Artist rendition. Is it Norse architecture? They're comparing it to that. I don't see it myself. I don't think that looks like a windmill. Nice megaliths on top of a megalith wall, though. There it is. Now, this seemed like something I should show you. What's going on the inside there for your windmill? Was that where they had some contraption? Like the cross beam? Is there another one on the other side? Hung the grinding mill? Because windmills got to have a place to grind the grain. Just throwing out the Dighton rock as something else weird around Rhode Island, you know, in that area. I don't know. Everybody goes like, this is so weird. You know, it's like just another pictograph. They're all weird. I'm beginning to think more and more they on the rock, they're trying to show us anatomical parts or something of how to trace it. Maybe they were trying to figure out how to walk to gold. If they can't place it as a full titan of different sizes, that's the hard part, is the fractaling it. Because the 15 giant looks like a titan mountain. It's all fractals of the same size. So but it's always wondering, what size am I looking at? Is this a swirl at the end of a mega titan, or is it a big part of a cartilage on a 30-footer? We don't know. What we do know, we got a weird history. The Jorge Malagon
wasn't even requiring that they
now,
change
just a
their
little bit,
governments in any sort of way,
when they started
or elect
hiding our
new
this
leadership that was not
Darwinism
part of
was
the
taking
Confederacy in
over,
any way.
people didn't believe the
And this
Bible
is going to
anymore
bring
because
him
they got
into a
fooled.
great deal of conflict with the radical Republicans in Congress, as we will see. Since Andrew Johnson was not requiring the former Confederate states to change their governments or their leadership, one of the things that these governments did was pass the so-called Black Codes, which were a series of laws attempting to disenfranchise Black voters from exercising their constitutional rights. The first state to pass the black code was Mississippi in 1865, and it involved doing things like giving the African American voter a literacy test to prove that they could read or write. Of course, many of them could not read or write because it had been illegal to teach a slave how to read or write, or they would have them ask them to recite the Declaration of Independence or some sort of thing like that, which was nearly impossible for them to do. Another thing was imposing poll taxes. Do you want to vote? Sure. Well, but you have to pay a tax. It was a tax that would be, and it could be a large amount of money in order for these people to exercise the privilege of voting. Another way the black codes worked was by criminalizing rather petty crimes. And here, what we see is a photograph of some prisoners. And so, what happened is
That'll teach you to try to vote. Boom! Back on the chain, gang.
and of course, here we have this depiction of the slaves on the plantation, perfectly happy, singing, dancing. Now, I want to point out over here, right? And you'll see this guy a little bit later on. The character he plays is Gus.
It is almost crazy scary how much this girl looks like my younger sister did when she was from, like, I don't know, let's say 15 to 25. It's crazy. Looks just like Vonnie.
But he's a white guy in blackface. Here's another white guy in blackface. Half of the actors, as you'll see shortly, about half of the actors in this film were whites in blackface, but the other half were actually African American actors. I guess they were getting paid.
Dancing in his underwear. This is Saturday night at the movies.
Now, here you see another part of the so-called lost cause narrative, which is that the war itself was uncalled for, that the South was just minding its own business, and here come the Yankees to destroy their way of life for no good reason.
No, no, no. They wanted to rape the white women.
Educated. They were not just, a newly freed slave right out of the field that didn't know how to read or write. These were men who had been educated. For example, though, although he didn't serve in any House of Representatives, Frederick Douglass. These were people that many of them had become lawyers and so forth.
So I guess they're trying to make an argument that that's not really what happened, but the president of the United States opened this movie at the White House and showed it to all his friends, and it was even quoted in the movie. This is 100 years ago since they released Flat Earth. This is too scary.
And now let's take a look at how the United Daughters of the Confederacy influenced the spread of the lost cause narrative through the control of
Probably all in
textbooks
the
in school.
Freemasons. The hidden
Listen to
hand
how this
that rocked
textbook
the
describes
cradle
slavery.
The master often
poisoned a
had
lot
a
of
barbecue
husbands
or a
along
picnic
the
for his
way.
slaves. Then they had a great frolic. Even while working in the cotton fields, they sang songs. The beat of the music and the richness of their voices made work seem light.
Yikes. That's from
Transcribed
History of
live?
Georgia, a textbook published in
Yeah,
1954 that was taught across junior high
Lots
schools in
of they
Georgia
do,
for
dog.
decades. That sort of language is part of an intellectual movement called the Lost Cause, a
The
distorted
lost
version of
cause
American
is
Civil War history
intellectual
that's been
language.
prevalent in the South for a long time. It took
Huh.
shape soon after the defeat of the
Is
Confederate
that a Masonic handshake? Indeed it is. These people went to school, I think, at the same time at West Point.
States in the war, when Southern historians like Edward Pollard and former Confederate General Jubal Early started preserving the South's perspective through their writings. They framed the Confederate cause as a heroic defense of the Southern way of life against the overwhelming forces in the North. That narrative has a few basic tenets.
Who was that guy working with Jim Early? Because that sounded like a... That's enough. That's a giant.
For white people and white Jesus. And now let's take a look at how the United Daughters of the Confederacy influenced the spread of the lost cause narrative through the control of textbooks in school.
Listen to how this textbook describes slavery.
The master often had a barbecue or a picnic for his slaves. Then they had a great frolic. Even while working in the cotton fields, they sang songs. The beat of the music and the richness of their voices made work seem light.
Yikes. That's from History of Georgia, a textbook published in 1954 that was taught across junior high schools in Georgia for decades. That sort of language is part of an intellectual movement called the Lost Cause, a distorted version of American Civil War history that's been prevalent in the South for a long time. It took shape soon after the defeat of the Confederate States in the war, when Southern historians like Edward Pollard and...
They were both Southern historians, but somehow it caught on in the North, man. Who's this guy?
lobbying skills to pressure local governments into erecting monuments in prominent public spaces like courthouses and state capitals.
Installed here next to the state capitol by the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
The United Daughters of the Confederacy donated this memorial to the city back in the 30s.
They put them along roadsides and in parks. Any place that was remotely relevant to the Confederacy was memorialized. By the early 20th century, the UDC had 100,000 members in chapters.
Wow. They put out 100,000 statues.
Spread all over the country, but mostly in former Confederate states. And there's a reason they grew so quickly during that time.
So we're talking about roughly 3 decades after the end of the war, and the Confederate veterans themselves are beginning to die off. So there is this push to find.
And they had a push, and it turned into a eugenics monstrosity that led to the United States. The one-drop rule, teaching Germany eugenics. So the rest of the world caught on, and they said, hold on, honky. You think you're the top of the weir. Let's play chess and see who's the smartest. And then they said, well, which comes to fighting? And then Japan won. So the white nations ganged up on them at the end of World War II. Don't think that it was saved by atomic weapons. This is a mafia saying, hey, we can't go out of business completely. Hey, what's this? You got to be kidding me. Look at that. Wow. Segue. Except this is a segue because we'll pick up on other stuff like this manana. That's a little bit of Espanol for you guys who just don't realize that you already know 4,000 words in Espanol. Cognates. You know, if I told you something in English was important, and then I turned to the person next to me and I said, muy importante. You know, you don't have to be genius to figure out, oh, I think that's another way of saying important. Importante. Want to see a cool grave site? sometimes they find whole tombs. And I just thought, because I was looking up Ka anyway, based on the root of a Hebrew. It was a nerdy thing, doesn't matter. Anyway, I looked up just Ka. And Ka and Merritt popped up, and I hadn't heard of her. I've heard of Merritt, of course, but not Ka and Merritt. Anyway, he was an ancient Egyptian foreman, Ka, and his wife, Merritt, in the northern cemetery of the Workmen's Village. So this is the northern cemetery of the Workmen's Village. Wow, it's huge. And their normal, he was a boss, so he got buried like this. Him and his wife. They opened it up and found it and said, "Let's take a picture." Allegedly, I'll show you all the pictures now and do a little reading on it. That's on a tomb, a chest, a box. Probably looked to me maybe 25 by 12, and it had in it some of those really neat dresses. Well, she's wearing one, as a matter of fact. Hey, so's he. This must be Con Merritt. These are their children giving them gifts. One of the gifts was a box. I don't know what he's holding. I don't know what he's holding. Well, she's holding his hand. It's in the Louvre now. Well, that's nice, I guess. I'm not getting much. I see the Eye of Horus, swastika swirl. I got nothing on the bottom. That's weird. I don't know if that's Car Merit, but it's something written about them. There's the picture again. Here's how they found it. Box. See, we've seen that picture. I just really I'm going to save this. It's funny how the men were black and the women were lighter skinned. Did you notice that? And it's funny that it's a royal cubit covered in gold leaf. Did you notice how the girls are lighter skinned? Than the men. I think the men have been outside riding the chariots around. Unless you got a better idea. If they have something on the royal cubit, I want to see it. Otherwise, this could take, this would just be too much. But royal cubit me, man. I want to know how long exactly a royal cubit is. But are those nice? It's like they seem like they'd be too big, but it doesn't show anything highlighted for the royal cubit that was found in the foreman. He might have been in charge of measuring because he's the foreman. He'd go walking around with this. Making sure their work is good. There's this. We'll look at some of the pictures. Here's the Egyptian Museum of Turin. So I guess they were okay, smart. That's all they're going to give us, huh? What's this one? Istanbul. Supposed to be the Dexter vested. Now I know that they can be a lot more precise than that. Here are some media. Let's just look at this one. That is a reproduction from the National Bank of Ukraine. Bronze sort of measuring device. That's not too weird. I always wonder what years they put on the coin around the time of Jesus. What year did they think it was? If that would be a help. Royal Cubit, Royal Cubit. Satan will be released. Okay. All right. Now, what is he? We are acting, they've trained us to be fools. You don't have to like that song. I'm not a big fan of it. Have I shown you this word ka? Grace, favor. I was looking at the prefix. Favor in the eyes. I have found favor. You've been adopted. You've been found. You've been chosen since before the foundation of the earth, like everyone on the narrow road would have to be. If found favor, you found grace. Favor, grace, favor, grace, favor, grace. I have found favor, grace, and we just got out of the book of Genesis. Proverbs 3:22. There you go. Adornment. A bribe is seen as a charm by the one who gives it. They think success will come at every turn. You dirty bribers, you're crazy. You think all I got to do is give them some money. And some people ask for bribes. A present is like a precious stone in the eyes of its possessor. Wherever he turns, he prospers. The eyes of his possessor, a present, is like a charm, a magic stone, a lucky charm, a bribe. So naturally, I was curious. How can this be precious stone? It's a stone. It's precious. It is a stone that has found favor, grace. He gives grace, so you'll find favor. She can be a garland of grace. There is no, a woman attains, a woman buys and sells, a woman has in the Old Testament Passover, in the New Testament baptism, and offers the woman more love and protection than any religion in the world, and yet it's despised. You tell me why. Why does the Bible say 0 times like father, like son? It says 3 times like mother, like daughter. Well, I'm going to read this myself. Oh Lord, you have searched me and known me. I'm talking to you. He's talking to me. We're in on this together. This is the way that famous Psalm 139 starts. He knew you before the foundation. It continues in verse 2. You know when I sit down, when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it altogether. You hem me in behind and before. You lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is high. I cannot attain it. Where shall I go from your spirit, or where shall I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take my wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness will cover me, and the light about me will be night. Even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is bright as day, for darkness is as light to you. For you formed my inward parts, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works. My soul knows it very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes saw my unformed substance. In your book were written, every one of them, the days that were formed for me, when as yet there was none of them. How precious to me are your thoughts, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I would count them, they are more than the sand. I awaken. I am still with you. Oh, that you would slay the wicked, O God. O men of blood, depart from me. They speak against you with malicious intent. Your enemies take your name in vain. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? Do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with complete hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me, and know my thoughts, and see if there be any grievous way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. Now, we do live in a different time where we've been taught to run and hide, beat our swords into plowshares. This blasphemy has earned a place on the clock.
1,500 years things weren't looking too good. And you guys know that there was a Roman Inquisition as well. The Spanish one was especially brutal, so it gets a little more attention, but the Church of Rome don't play. I've got a whole playlist on this subject. We're up to 21 videos. And if this is your first time hearing all this, you might pause and take a minute to take it all in. And I'm just telling you, it all makes a lot of sense if you actually allow yourself to analyze the material here. I'm not saying anything bad about Jesus here. In my opinion, they're the ones
that
that are
is an absolute lie. Everything when you talk about the Father, you're talking about Jesus and Yahweh, Jehovah, Melchizedek, the captain of the Lord of hosts. That's Elyon, the Most High Spirit, teaching a lesson to the angels as he deals with what they consider a worm and not a real Adam, a man.
saying something bad. They're telling you Yahweh and Jesus are of the same substance, is how I think they put it. So read the old T, and every time it says Yahweh, put the name Jesus in there and tell me how Jesus sent an angel to the Assyrians and off to 185,000 in one night. He just woke up, and as far as the eye can see,
Is that you just wake up? Nothing else was happening. Every time when you read in the Bible, they're warned. Don't, don't come here. We don't want to go there. Other times it was go there. This is going to be your land. He divided the nations. The end from the beginning in a book that wasn't written to us or about us, but for us to understand this is a spiritual battle. We're told that the angels, when Jesus Christ was being crucified, were in amazement looking down, saying, "What manner of things is this?" That's in scripture, not some other apocryphal book. They don't know the end. We do. They kind of get it. They lose. They know. Now is not your time, Jesus. But, and as for when he gets into the, Pharaoh, were they not warned? Didn't they help them? Did Joseph ask too much? Can some brothers mean something for harm, but God use it for good? Obviously.
And you have to get circumcised. Then while they're laying around recovering, they come in and off every man in the town and keep the women and the livestock. They consider both possessions. And
Judah's brother, Judah, and they were not the best of people. And the Bible doesn't start with Joseph's amazing Technicolor dreamcoat. You get the whole idea. But jumping up to Joseph.
Robe. This is known as the robe of many colors, and I'm just going to pass on that one. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him.
You think he's trying to imply that the patriarch Joseph was gay or something? How much more on the clock can you get?
And could not even speak a kind word. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had."
Okay, so he basically goes over it acting like Jesus is an evil person. And so
he saw that Joseph wasn't there. He tore his clothes and went back to his brother.
So he's basically going over the whole story and to get to his blasphemy.
Way is more like an evil jinn that has chosen one tribe of people to use to conquer the world as long as they just swear blind allegiance and do whatever depraved thing he wants.
That's pretty
You can kind of see this as a doctrine of a state within a state. It's not as blatant as the Babylonian Holy Book, but it's still the same principle that these are the ordained people to rule over all of us chattel. But now Joseph is in charge of the whole prison, and the warden doesn't even pay attention because.
So he's still going over the story, but blaspheming until he gets to his, just like, wow, I'm just like a God hater.
Says, "I had this dream." And Joseph demurely says, "I can't tell you
demurely
what it is, but God can." So they tell the whole story again, in case you missed it the first time. And then the second dream of Constantine is a forged document from supposedly the 4th century where Emperor Constantine signed over the entire kingdom to the Church of Rome. They basically had the whole world convinced that they were the ultimate authority. And then around the 1600s or so, I don't remember exactly, but a philologist looks at this document. Philologist studies the evolution of writing. And they say, no, there's no way that this was written in the 4th century. Just all of it is wrong. It's like somebody supposedly from the 1600s saying it's not rocket science. Well, rockets ain't been invented yet, bro. So that's just what Christianity has done with things, and others have done more here. But
so just interjection there, just to like somehow trash all of Christianity and relate it to Roman Catholicism. Famine spreading over it. Joseph opened up. He's acting like, he
country, if you're watching this on down the line, this is just after the hurricane hit, and there are tens of thousands of people that need help out there, and they're turning away people that are trying to help and telling people, no, don't donate to the local churches or anything. Give it directly to us. We're the authorities. And really, if you stand back and look at the big picture here, what Joseph did was go down to Egypt and tell Pharaoh that Clamata Chang is about to happen, and I'm going to get filthy rich out of this instead of.
Did not Joseph interpret a dream and said, here's what's going to happen? The Lord had ordained it. His people were, got turned on. Make bricks without straw. Put your sons in the river. What, Egypt didn't do any of that? There's good guys here? I think not.
Just doing something to help. So I'm going to skip about 4 chapters here of how his brothers who had sold him into slavery came along to buy grain.
Mock, mock, mock.
They managed to split the kingdom in 2 and were eventually expelled. And I believe that is the whole reason for the first standing army ever in Egypt. So just to hear the secular side of things there, it sounds a lot like what they're talking about here in the Bible with taking over all of these important positions. So Joseph settled his father and brothers in Egypt, gave them property in the best part of the land, the district of Ramses, as Pharaoh directed, made sure they had plenty of food. There was no food, however, in the whole region because the famine was so severe. Joseph collected all the money that was to be found in Egypt and Canaan in payment for the grain that they were buying. That was the people's grain.
Why couldn't God just make everybody happy? He's not teaching a lesson to the angels in heaven about sin and how sin infects everything. These people, I guarantee every single one of them is lost in their sins like you and I were. You remember what that was like, right? Oh my goodness, I hope I know who I'm talking to.
5/5, at least, And of course, all Egypt is rejoicing in gratitude. You've saved our lives. May we find favor in the eyes of
They didn't know how it ended. They were going year to year. Egypt was fast running out of the food, but they were trusting that God said, oh, things will get back to normal after 7 years. If there hadn't been the food in Egypt, they all would have died. When the first comes to give their side, it's one way. But when you stop and think about it, wait, hey, hold on now.
Put your hand under my thigh and promise that you will show me kindness and faithfulness. Do not bury me in Egypt. What's up with the hand under the thigh thing? Anyway,
It's where Jacob pulled his muscle when he was wrestling with God, getting blessed. Because even though he was so small, he was going to persevere and try to wrestle it out.
That's another great tale of morality from the OT. I'm going to have to do the book of Judges soon because that really tells you what they're all about here. It's literally just generation after generation where God favors them and they grow strong enough to enslave all of their neighbors. That's the main goal. And then they sacrifice a goat on the wrong day or whatever and make God mad. And God allows them to be decimated down into small numbers again. And then a couple generations.
That's what the whole Bible's about to him. And so these last couple minutes are all blasphemy.
Just done what God wanted you to, then this would have been avoided. But since
how they hate correction. They say that's what they say. They despise correction. RJ, what's up? That was about a half hour ago. He's still there. I don't know if you want to pop on, RJ, or if you want to wait for Mignana. We'll be hitting it at 8:00 Central Time in the morning, going over some Bible verses and some other things like that. So, lost cause. But anyway, a lot to process, a lot going on here. But this is the place, Alamosa. We're going to go over some of the history of Alamosa, how people got here, why Salt Paco thinks it's safe, and everything else. Remember that part in there earlier about you're called and you hear his voice? You're going to end up on your knees confessing that Jesus Christ is Lord. Believe it in your heart, confess it with your mouth. That's what they did. And then they get baptized. It's a flat earth nation. The mud flood was Armageddon. You know, me and my friends, we're never going to tell you anything else. Why would we? We're trying to prove that we have your best interest at heart. Amen. Hallelujah. Aho. Aloha. Arrivederci. Ciao. Sayonara. Auf Wiedersehen. Nakame. I'm just